Barbados imports more fish and fish products than it produces. And in the Barbados Fisheries Policy, recognizing this, requires the government to support the contribution of sustainable aquaculture to its economic growth, food security, and income diversification. There are several aquaculture and few mariculture and ventures that have been undertaken in Barbados in the past, and these have had markedly different success rates. And it is therefore prudent to critically review and assess these ventures with the objectives of identifying their failures, and where possible, identify corrective actions. And the lessons learned will then advise the development of policies, plans, and management to promote viable and sustainable aquaculture and mariculture in Barbados. So this study would have involved the review of academic publications, articles in the popular press, web resources, information in official files of the Fisheries Division, supplemental information, supplemental information obtained through interviews with key informants. It focused on a number of areas of aquaculture, including tilapia, decapod species, sea moss mariculture, finfish mariculture, aquaponics, and aquaculture in stock rehabilitation programs. Now, the earliest recorded involvement of Barbados in what could be called aquaculture was actually the exportation of species of native guppies, we called millions, back in the turn of the century in an effort for mosquito control. And this was facilitated via the colonial government at the time. And these millions were sent to just around the world, pan-tropical distribution in the Caribbean, throughout the Caribbean, South America, West Africa. It went to the London Zoo as a distribution point, as well as the Panama construction zone. And from 1949, I think throughout the region would have been part of this program. The colonial fisheries officer promoted the introduction of the Mozambique tilapia from Malaysia to St. Lucia, and from there it was sent to several British West Indies countries. And Barbados received the first set of these fish from St. Lucia in 1952. There were 120 fish that were released into Graham House Swamp. And since then, the species has been introduced over the years into nearly every permanent body of water on the island. So the lessons from this is that thanks to the British Empire, with the best of intentions, millions and Mozambique tilapia are now considered among the 9 most invasive alien species in freshwater ecosystems in every continent except Antarctica. And you need, as such, you need to develop legislation specifically controlling the introduction of non-native species in general. At the moment, most of that legislation is focused on preventing the introduction of pests and diseases. But such legislation has to be put in place to ensure that you're not introducing harmful invasive alien species for aquaculture. So we have had several aquaculture and mariculture focused research over the years, starting in the 1960s at Bellairs Research Institute. They looked into the possibility of culturing the native big claw river shrimp, Macrobacchium carcinus. In the late 1980s, a PhD student, Dr. Marie-Louise Felix, studied the ecology and culture of the native freshwater shrimps. However, there were no Macrobacchium species of shrimp have ever no commercial aquaculture or any other culture of Macrobacchium species has materialized over the years. Another UWI student, Celeste Hill, looked at the feasibility of restoring native sea moss, Gracilaria debilis, as a commercial enterprise. She identified culture techniques, but whereas sea moss aquaculture was undertaken, it was really using other more highly productive species, gel-producing species, including GT, and not the native species. And in 1987, an aquaculture research building was funded by Lome 2 and built at the AFIL campus, and it was used as a teaching and research facility and a hatchery for the production of red hybrid tilapia fingerlings. I think it has since closed. In 1997, some of the more lesson-worthy enterprises that have occurred. A small family-owned tilapia farm in St. George tried to culture Australian red claw crayfish. It was originally meant for food, but then they thought that the aquarium trade was more profitable and they switched to the aquarium trade. That didn't work, and they finally sold the production as food and came out of the industry. The interesting thing with that is the flip-flop from the target market of food to aquarium product caused some potential legal issues. It never really became a problem because they switched back to food, but basically they had been granted, they had been granted duty-free concessions on the basis of it being food. So the lesson learned is that you need to clearly articulate a business plan, including identifying your target markets and conducting all the necessary research in the need that is needed in that area. Government-led research into aquaculture in the 1980s, primarily through the Greenland tilapia farm that operated from 1983 to 86. It was a collaborative effort of the government of Barbados, UWI, the Peace Corps, USAID, and eventually the FAO Technical Cooperation Among Developing Countries program. It involved the pond culture of Nile tilapia and hybrid red tilapia. It was beset with operational challenges. And this, for example, the supply of water was piped in from a natural stream, but was also that the stream itself was subject to seasonal fluctuations. And it also was shared by the Agricultural Research Station near the farm and a nearby brick factory. So there was competition for the water. The pond was dug in clay soil that still had porous limestone outcrops, so it leaked. And there was a high incidence of fish theft. So in December 1986, the fish in the grout pond were eventually culled and the pond drained for fear that the water was contaminated with chemical used to spray the cattle in the nearby farm. And the farms continued to supply fingerlings to locals until it closed in 1989. So the lesson learned from that is that pond culture is still possible, but pond design is critical. So natural ponds can be dug in the clear areas of Barbados, so it's restricted to the Scotland area district, but it should be properly excavated and to remove all the limestone outcrops, and the clear has to be properly compacted. In other areas of limestone, which dominates the island, ponds must be lined with plastic. And it is critical to secure a steady source of fresh water, possibly pumped from wells. You want to avoid runoff. Ponds should be surrounded by levees to do this, to prevent the incursion of potential environmental contaminants from land runoff. There is a picture of the aquaculture farm pond in Greenland, and you can see that there is really no levee that's just dug down there. And so anything could have washed in, including, for example, the potential contaminants. And then one of the most commercially successful farms was Adams Aqualife. And from late 2013, she utilized intensive recirculating green water technology in grow tanks, raising hybrid red tilapia for sale. The farm was commercially successful until 2020, actually 2022, I think it is, I have 2020 there, but when the lease for the land was renewed. Nature's Produce Inc., established in 1995, Nature's Produce Inc. was a very highly successful organic farm that by 2010 had become involved in integrated aquaculture, rearing Australian red claw crayfish and tilapia. By 2012, the farm planned to ramp up production, but in late 2015, after a protracted legal battle, the company lost its bid to purchase the land on which it operated. Of course, lessons are learned here. The small size of the island, together with its very high population density, will significantly constrain the land area available to commercial scale aquaculture in Barbados. And the limited land area also leads to fierce competition for access to it. So the two most technically sound, promising, and successful commercial scale aquaculture ventures eventually fell victim to this reality. Finfish Mariculture. In 1994, the first mariculture project in Barbados was started by an American-based company to raise Corfina hipporis. It was located at Half Moon Fort in Barbados. Production levels of these rather delicate fish were too low to be financially successful. Anybody who has tried to raise dolphin knows if you barely touch it, it will get a disease. Local investors then partnered with a successful fish farming company in Martinique to form a new company in 1999 using the plant for commercial culture of red drum from fertilized egg stage. They imported the eggs from Martinique. Production was very successful. However, marketing the adult fish production was problematic as the company was foreign-based, and by law, it could not sell its production locally. And planned sales back to Martinique were barred by EU fish import restrictions. However, they did manage to sell fingerlings to the EU market and export fingerlings because they were not really under the EU regulations considered as fish. In March 2020, now we're on to aquaponics. In March 2009, a young entrepreneur teamed up with other residents of his home village to form the Beards Village Aquaponics Association. The original production array was comprised of one fish tank and 4 plant grow-out beds composed of a bed of coconut core laid over a frame. At the moment, they raise tilapia and pacu, and for fee, they offer instruction and training in the number of aquaponics-related topics. However, from late 2017, government participated in an FAO-funded project entitled Towards the Caribbean Blue Revolution. The main objective was the establishment of a functional demonstrating aquaponics farm on the island to be used for the hands-on training of interested persons to successfully establish and run an aquaponics farm. The farm was set up at Adams Aqualife. The deep water culture methods used were a raft method or floating system and the nutrient film technique. The project was highly successful, and to date, in addition to the original target of training 40 persons, Adams has privately trained at least 80 persons as well as school children. At least 75 units have been built by persons to provide food for their families, and between 20 and 30 have been built and operated as small businesses. So the lesson learned, there's great potential for aquaponics in Barbados, and it must be included in any aquaculture development program. Aquaculture and stock rehabilitation programs. I'll go over this very quickly. The main commercial stock of interest in this area is the Barbados white sea urchin, Trypnustes ventricosus. First suggestions of this as a laboratory culture of larvae for restocking program were way back at the turn of the century by Durden in 1901. David Tennant in 1910 managed to rear Trypnustes larvae to the early Pluteus stage. Theodore Mortensen in 1921 reared at least the larvae to the at least its 22-day stage. Anne Hickey, for her thesis in 1982, reared some sea egg larvae to just over 2 weeks. And in 1987, Robert Scheibling and Philip Mladenoff unsuccessfully attempted the artificial rearing of sea egg larvae for a potential restocking project. When I say unsuccessfully, they did not get it to the settlement stage. And successful laboratory culture of T. ventricosus has been done by Walcott and Messing in 2005. And so there is still the hope that T. ventricosus aquaculture rearing can be part of a restocking program. And this is being done successfully for a cogeneric species, T. gratula, in Hawaii. So very quickly, future work, regardless of the scale or type of aquaculture or mariculture, government should systematically and transparently review all aquaculture and mariculture proposals, offering guidance to proponents to ensure that they are sustainably viable without compromising environmental and the well-being protection and the well-being and livelihoods of all Barbadians. To facilitate this, it's suggested that a standard panel of stakeholders comprised of experts in their fields should be appointed, both to advise on the proposals and chart the way forward for the sector. All aquaculture and mariculture activities must be managed with the support of a comprehensive legislative framework that prevents unwholesome and untenable ventures. And I think many people could figure out about the unwholesome, what I'm referring to there, while supporting viable innovation. So it has to weed out the bad seeds, basically. And in relation to commercial scale ventures, the legislation should mandate production of a business plan and plans to manage waste and effluents, biosecurity and escapements, etc. And while the business-related requirements will not be required for small operations, even these operations must still be regulated in the context of protecting the environment. And to this end, the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Bill includes a section dedicated to aquaculture and mariculture, and the pertinent management regulations have been accepted by Cabinet and have been sent for legal drafting. Important, the take-home message is, given the limited area of Barbados, it is critical that especially large-scale undertakings be carefully chosen for success. Failure is not an option. We cannot waste our resources for failed large-scale operations.
We thank you, Chris, for your presentation. It was very information-rich and certainly further food for thought among all the presentations today. We wish Barbados all the best in the development of their regulations.